Hello everybody and welcome back to The Endless Party.
Woohoo!
Today we are joined by Winnie.
Yep, she wouldn't sleep.
She wouldn't sleep and so she's gonna be here with us.
Here.
Which is actually quite fitting because today we're talking all about relationships. And not just marital relationships, we're talking about relationships.
All relationships
with your kids, with your siblings, with your coworkers, with your friends. This episode is all about advice we've gathered from trusted sources about how to just strengthen your relationships.
Yeah, so we're actually really looking forward to this. Fun fact, Meg actually majored in this subject.
I did.
It's family sciences, so it's really just all about relationships with family, with, like she said. So there's a plethora of knowledge that she can share with all of us. It's actually been really beneficial to our family and our relationship, truly. So tune in.
So something that's super interesting is a lot of people, like sometimes you'll hear this phrase, like, I don't care whether people like me or not. But this is just false. So each of us have an inherent need that we want to be wanted and needed.
Yes.
Each one of us needs relationships to make our life fulfilled.
Yeah, without them we would die.
We really would die. Like, we need the connection that comes from...
She would die without us.
She would die with that. We need the connection that comes from these relationships. And so that's why this podcast really is so important. Because also, something that's interesting too, is oftentimes when people's last words are always about family, friends, people that matter to them. And so how do you gather like a lot of people in your life who matter to you? Well, you become really good at relationships. So
you become a relationship expert.
You become a relationship
or a master.
expert. Yes. Something else that's super interesting too is Elijah and I have like noticed most people when they get married, you know, their goal is to stay married.
Yes.
And they marry someone who they believe they have a really positive relationship with. And sometimes this kind of gets
well, they
lost.
they have this hope and this faith that each of them are going to go through life and battle and build together, and that they are going to fight through their differences and become better for it. But then something like Meg was mentioning just gets lost along the way, and they kind of forget that. And it's really sad, actually.
It is sad. So we're going to kind of get back into that later, but I think now what we did is we asked just all of our friends and family what their best relationship...
People that we have relationships with.
And we asked what their best relationship advice was.
Yeah.
So let's share some of the ideas that they came up with.
They were actually really, really great
They were
ideas.
really
And it was
good.
pretty cool because not really one of the ideas was the same as the other. And so what's kind of cool about this is that there's not one specific answer to build a beautiful relationship or to have stronger relationships in your life. There's hundreds of thousands of things that you can do in order to have a great, lasting, fulfilling relationship. And so here's just what they've mentioned.
Okay, so Wendy said, I'd say collaboration. Being able to collaborate with each other is very important. No matter how close you are, there will be situations where you two may not be on the same page. So being open-minded enough to collaborate with each other so that both of you can come out satisfied. That could apply to anything from money to childcare, etc. Something I really liked about this one is I like this idea that both individuals are going to come out satisfied.
Yeah, they come out on top.
Both of them, not just one.
Not a single person loses in this understanding that Wendy mentions, and so and that's actually really beneficial for, even we've seen it in our own relationship and in our family, is this understanding that everybody should win at the end of the day. Like, there shouldn't be any losers, and especially in a marriage, there shouldn't be any losers in a marriage.
No.
Like, you guys should collaborate with one another to find the best outcome for all parties involved.
Okay, I'm gonna read the next one. This is from my grandma. So, just a backstory about my grandma. Her husband passed away when he was in his 60s, early 60s, suddenly from a heart attack.
Yeah.
And she loved him so dearly. So
They had a great
relationship. So she said, love God more than you love your spouse. Each must support the other as the person strives to live life together. Then put your spouse before anyone else. Children, parents, friends. Sometimes it's tricky and you must communicate. Then figure out together what works for the two of you, and be flexible so it can change as you, your schedules, and your children do. I'm sure I've told you about my parents the day after they were married. They were lying in bed on that first morning, and my mom finally asked my dad if he was going to get up and build the fire. He said he thought she was going to do it. His mom built the fire, and her dad built the fire when they were growing up. I think there's a lot of that in life. Work together in meekness and love unfeigned.
I actually really like that because you come from two different worlds, especially when you get married, that you guys do things completely different from one another. And those small differences aren't even a big deal. They're really just petty little details.
But it does take this communication to
have to talk
work
about
through
it.
them.
I mean,
You have these interesting expectations.
Yeah, I've spoke about this before, I'm pretty sure, on the podcast, but like, me and Meg folded laundry differently, which made sense. We came from different mothers, right, and fathers. And so what's interesting is, like, I remember that she was folding laundry a certain way, and like I was getting so upset by it. And then I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. And so I just started folding it the way that she did it. And I haven't even given it a second thought until right now.
I didn't even know when that was going
Yeah,
down.
and she had no idea, right? I was just like, what is she doing? This is not how you fold laundry. But it's like, laundry's laundry, and if it's folded, it's folded. You know, and it's the same with her great-grandmother's story of building the fire. You know, so just communicate and just understand that, like, you guys come from different worlds, and what's so cool about that is you can make a world that's unique to both of you.
I also love the part, too, that was talking about how you put God first, your spouse second.
Oh, absolutely.
And two, putting your spouse before children, friends,
Before
parents,
this yahoo.
even parents, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's, like, so important.
Yeah, you have to set those boundaries early on in your relationship and understand that your spouse comes first, always.
Right. Okay,
After the Lord, of
after
course.
the Lord. Okay, so this one is from my 16-year-old brother, and he's referring to Friends, and he says, backstory on my brother. He is like social butterfly. He has tons of friends.
He has all the friends.
And so this is what he says. I think something that makes relationships worth it is having common interests. I feel like once you have common interests, you're able to build upon it, and then you can build as friends. So one thing I've noticed my brother does is he kind of
Finds common ground.
and he finds things that other people are interested in, and then sometimes he'll become interested in it too, to have friends. And that's actually a principle from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Is become interested in what they're interested in.
Yeah.
Like he talked about how in his book he became interested in this guy who was like all about gardening type thing.
Yes.
And the guy talked to him for like hours.
Yes.
Because he was just like actually intrigued by this guy's garden.
Super cool.
So it's pretty cool.
Okay, this next relationship advice is from Elijah's sister, Macy. And she says it's in two parts. First, she would say to always communicate and to do it kindly. If you can't communicate something kindly in the moment, let your significant other know that you need a minute to work through your thoughts. Communicating out of anger is only asking to make a matter worse. I would agree.
My mom actually said something similar.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay, communicate about everything. Don't ever tell half-truths to spare feelings or wait for something to pass. Always let your partner know how you feel about things, what your hopes and goals are, and allow room in your heart for a difference of opinion, and even room to change your own mind. I also like that. Second is about yourself in the relationship. Ask yourself on a regular basis what needs you have that aren't being met, as well as what needs your partner has that aren't being met, and make plans and time to fulfill those needs. A relationship is everything, but in order to have a healthy relationship, it is my opinion that it takes two individuals whose needs are being met. Everyone needs personal time. It's healthy. Time alone and doing something that brings joy is beneficial to individual growth and learning. That can be taking a bath, going on a hike, working out, meditating, reading, whatever it may be. This personal time is pertinent to individual growth. A relationship of two individuals will fail to grow if each individual isn't personally growing. To be open and honest, communicating all thoughts and needs, talking about things even when they feel intimidating or hard is crucial. As you take time to grow as an individual, you will gain confidence in yourself and continue to grow. When two individuals tend to their personal needs as well as their partners, choosing to grow, communicating about everything along the way, and sharing in one another's journeys, and make sure that they can grow together and not apart.
I love my sister. That was super long.
That was so good.
It is so good. I'm not even criticizing, I promise.
No.
Super, super good. And I actually agree with her in everything. Like, there is a time and a place that every person needs some alone time. They need time to work on themselves and just better themselves. And you can't do that as a couple always.
Mm-mm.
You know, you have to take that time and that space. And then, obviously, it's best not to communicate when you're angry.
I agree.
Because things are said and done
just
that
dumb.
shouldn't be said and
It's
done.
just so dumb. You look back and you're like, why did I even say
Why
that?
did I say that? It was so bad. So I actually agree. She did a wonderful job.
Okay, this next one is from my Aunt Ashley. She says, find one thing you appreciated or loved about your spouse that day. I often write them down in my journal, and it makes me realize so many reasons to adore him. Which I think is super cute. Every day she looks for something good.
Yeah, she's a good finder. That was an episode.
It was an episode.
What a great aunt.
What a great aunt. Okay, this is from another one of my aunts. She goes, I think what's been most important for the peace I feel in relationships is trying hard to think highly of the person. Then I don't feel the need to say bad things and feel bad things about them if I'm not wasting mental energy on thinking poorly. If I don't have a great perception of the person, I think it's better to look for a good thing about them, or just try not to think about them at all, instead of deepening my poor impression by thinking about things that have bugged or annoyed me. And it makes my interactions more kind when I've been trying to think and notice the best parts of others. I actually really like that one. So there's this phrase I actually say to myself every day, and it is, resentment is the number one hindrance to spiritual power, or just power. And I've actually noticed if I need, creative energy or just energy, resentment is so draining. And so it's so draining. And so I actually really like her advice that she either tries to think highly of that person or just not of that person at all. And I had this habit going on in my head where I would just spiral into this negative energy and just resent people so much for little things they've done or said. And so a big change I've made in my life is I just do the same thing as her. I just try to either not think about them at all or only think of the good. And it's actually really strengthened my relationships with people, but also just helped me be a happier person.
I agree. I really liked her advice. It was really good.
Okay, so my brother talked about loyalty, and he actually sent a voice recording. So we're going to insert it right here.
I would say some relationship advice. I'm probably not the greatest person to ask, but I know something that means a lot to me in a relationship is loyalty. I feel like when two individuals are loyal to each other, and I'm not even meaning husband and wife, but even a brother, a sister, or a friend, are just loyal to each other and really cherish a relationship. I think loyalty is something that makes a relationship that just that much stronger, and it's kind of the glue to everything. So I think loyalty is really important.
Okay, then these are from Elijah's parents.
Yeah, this is my mom, and she said, always think before you speak. Never try and resolve serious issues when you are angry. Walk away and discuss things when you have had a minute to decide if the problem is more important than the personal relationship. Which I actually think is good advice. It's never a good idea to handle anything angry.
No.
Don't go to the store angry, you buy dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Don't argue angry, you say dumb stuff. Realistically, it's just never really good to do anything angry.
I agree.
My father said, if you become attracted to a person and like that person, then obviously you like them for who they are. So don't try and change them. We should work on changing ourselves to become a better person, not work on changing someone else. And I will actually say, to this man's credit, he does a very good job at this. He actually strives to change himself on a daily basis. And so I actually agree with that, is you should never try to change another person. You should always try to change yourself.
Interestingly enough, too, you can't.
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about this more, but you can't change somebody else. You can only change yourself.
Okay.
My sister said, talk it out. Everything, even if you think it might hurt the other person's feelings. Communication is so important. And then she said, this is more about marriage, obviously. Also, sex and intimacy play a huge role in connecting with your partner. If If it's not a priority, make it one, even if you have to schedule it into your life. Which, yeah, that just makes sense.
There you go. This is from my really good friend Riley. And she says, for a dating relationship, you attract who you date and you marry who you date. So start by becoming the person you want to marry. If you are wanting to find someone to date or marry, start within. Work on yourself to become the kind of person you see yourself marrying. Then keep doing this throughout your dating and eventual marriage relationship. And then for a marriage relationship, communicate your expectations of anything and everything together before you do them. For example, before a family vacation, ask each other what your expectations are. You come from different backgrounds, so vacationing can look a lot different for you. You can get clear on what the other is hoping to get out of the trip and can help eliminate communication issues or hurt feelings later on. This is just one example, and the idea can be applied to any and all situations.
Yeah, I actually, first of all, her friend Riley she's
Riley,
just a gem.
okay,
She is so
Riley,
nice.
my friend Riley is
We
someone,
could do a podcast
yes,
on
I
her.
can do a whole podcast on her. I was talking to my mom today, and she's like, oh, how's Riley? I'm like, oh, she's great. And I was like, I love Riley because I love the person I am when I'm with Riley.
Right.
When I hang out with Riley, I like who I am.
Well, ironically enough, like, Riley's the type of person that brings the best out of other people.
Yes.
And so she is actually a queen at building relationships.
She is.
So hats off to her, and obviously she implements everything that she just talked about. And I actually 100% agree that you really are who you marry and who you date. And so if you want a Prince Charming or a Princess Charming, then you have to be a Prince Charming or a Princess Charming yourself.
Absolutely.
So pretty cool.
Okay.
Sound advice.
So this was all super good advice from, the people we love.
Just really everybody that we
Yeah.
love, yeah.
So now we're just gonna kind of get into mine and Elijah's advice, as well as like information we know that's like helped to strengthen our relationship.
Yeah.
So within the field of marriage and family therapy, what I got my degree in, there's this man, his name's John Gottman, and he's like the relationship expert. He spent his entire life researching what makes relationships work and also what makes them
He
fail.
is like marriage and family.
He
therapy.
is Dr. Love.
He is Dr. Love.
He is referenced
He's a
within,
cool dude.
Yeah, and he is referenced within the field. And like I said, he has done so much research on relationships.
Yeah.
And
his wife both.
I actually love his advice because what he explains is that what makes like relationships thrive, and this isn't just in marriage, this is in with like whatever relationship you want to pursue, it's all about tiny moments. It's all about the small and simple that create either a lasting relationship, or he calls it, you either master relationships or you're a disaster, is what he says.
Yeah.
So the way that he explains how you can become a master of relationships is he talks all about emotional bidding. So I'll give you some examples, but I'll just tell you the information first. So in every situation, when you bid to a person, there's 3 responses he's found. 1, you can turn towards the person, which is acknowledging the bid. 2, you can turn away, which is ignoring or missing the bid. And 3, you could turn against the bid. So that's rejecting the bid in an argumentative or belligerent way. So I'm gonna say something to Elijah, and he's gonna.
We're gonna role play.
We're gonna
here.
role play, and he's gonna explain. He's gonna show you what this looks like. So if I was like, "Oh, good morning, Elijah. The weather looks nice today, huh?"
Like, oh, good morning. Yes, it looks lovely.
So that's him turning.
That's acknowledging and no, is that
turning towards the bid.
It's turning towards the bid.
If I said, "Good morning, Elijah. The weather looks nice today."
No, it doesn't. What was that?
That one is turning against, rejecting the bid in an argumentative or belligerent way. And then if I said, "Good morning, Elijah. Look, the weather looks nice today." David, you being like, "What time is it?"
Oh, what time is it?
And that's like turning away. So like you just ignore or like miss
You
my
just
bid
disregard.
completely. Yes. So, okay, these are so simple. But in John Gottman's Love Lab, like the people who had mastered relationships, they turned towards each other 86% of the time, whereas disasters turn towards each other only 33% of the time. So all day, every day, in all your relationships, you are making these bids for connection.
Right.
And he explains that you're like filling these emotional bank accounts. So for example, Elijah and I, every day we're making these bids in our relationship. And the more positive they are, like the fuller our bank account gets. So Elijah and I would have, so if we turn towards each other all day, we have this really great perception, understanding, and like sense of security in our relationship because we've been kind.
Yeah.
Whereas if we spent the whole day like turning away or turning against each other, we're gonna have a really low bank account. Now, the reason why you wanna have this high emotional bank account is because
A lot to bank on.
you have a lot to bank on, yes. So like
You've built a foundation.
if we were in conflict or if something happened, well, we have so many positive interactions that they can overcome maybe one or two
Right.
negative interactions.
It's basically like a savings account for a rainy day. So if anything goes south, I'm not saying like dramatic things, you know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying if there is a rougher time or if there is something that either one of you is experiencing, you guys have a lot to bank on. That it's like, oh, they actually do love me. Oh, they've actually been there for me. And it's crazy because it is these tiny moments that accumulate over time. It's pennies upon pennies upon pennies that become millions and millions of dollars.
Yes.
Right? To continue the analogy.
And what's interesting too is like, I mean, we're using the example of a marriage, but this is true with your kids,
It's true with
your
everybody.
friends. It's true of like whatever relationship you're in.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with someone, like my advice to you is kind of look at how you're responding to that person's bid and see if you can change it.
Yeah.
See if you can give them more attention. See if you can turn towards their bid.
I agree.
This is because Gottman says, bid often. Master the art of the tiny moment. Reach out to show you care. Send a good luck message before a meeting. Leave an encouraging note on the fridge. Kiss your partner when they walk in the door. Oh, also, Gottman recommends a kiss that lasts at least 6 seconds.
We'll keep this PG, so we're not going
Happy-
to kiss on here.
Like,
Can you kiss in PG movies?
yes.
Oh, well, we'll keep this G.
I think you can kiss in G movies.
Well, I don't know.
Like Sleeping Beauty's G. They kiss
Is
at
it?
the end.
Well, then never mind. We're just not kissing on
Yeah.
camera.
Why?
Because it's naughty.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so happy couples bid all the time.
Yeah.
So like what's interesting is Gottman found that like at a dinner, like throughout the dinner, a happy couple is going to bid like 100 times to each other in that one interaction. Whereas like unhappy couples only bid like probably 60 times.
Yep. That's pretty sad.
Yes.
I'm constantly bidding to Meg.
Yeah.
That's only because she's
I
such
actually-
a hot tata.
Actually one time
No, just kidding. She's great in all the ways.
Actually, one
she is
time I
hot
was
too.
like, I just like was seeing how often we bid to each other in the span of like 20 minutes. It was a lot of times. Anyways, it was just interesting. Okay, so this is why this all comes full circle. What Gottman found when couples break up, it most of the time it's not because of the huge issues. It's never because of like infidelity or
Tiny
really big
moments.
fights. Yeah, it's always because of these huge, not these huge, these little moments
It
that
becomes
have
big over time.
accumulated into this huge reservoir of just resentment. And the thing is like this resentment has been harbored for years and years and years and years, and it all of a sudden becomes just this like huge, just dam full of just negative
Nonsense.
feelings.
Yeah.
So
Super sad.
here's something too. If you want to fix your relationship, I feel like too people think it's like this huge big fix, but also
Well,
start
then,
with the small
I
little
would also
things.
say they think it's this quick fix. Like doing one thing after you've neglected to do that your entire marriage isn't going to fix it overnight. It has to be those small and simple things on a daily basis. So if you are having problems in your friendship, in your marriage, in your relationships with your kids, parents, whatever it is, look back at your past experiences with them and see the tiny moments. See all the neglect that maybe has happened on your end or vice versa, and then try to implement those tiny moments, and eventually that relationship will improve. It's not going to improve overnight.
If it's taken that long to
Accumulate, it's going to
gonna
take
take-
that long to fix.
probably yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Elijah's now going to share his info.
Yeah. So actually, this comes from another book. It's called Crucial Conversations. It's a great book. And so what they talk about is that there is two realities we all must accept. And the first one is responsibility. They say you are only responsible for yourself, what you think, what you feel, what you do, and then you are not responsible for others, what they think, what and how they feel, or what they do. And then the second reality is change. So the first one is you can't change another person. 2, you can only change yourself. But then it says good news, you can change.
You can change.
So that's really exciting. It's actually interesting. It's super exciting. So it's actually pretty cool because I just think into all the relationships in my life, and if I'm ever upset with Meg or with my parents or with anybody that I have a really good relationship with, I start to think to myself, I'm like, man, if this one thing is bugging me, first of all, I'm sure they're aware of it, because most people are very aware of their faults without you telling them. At least I've come to understand that. And second is this understanding that if they have this one fault, then there's at least 100, if not 1,000 of faults that I need to correct. And it goes back to that scripture that Jesus Christ says, and he says, cast the beam out of thine eye before thou cast the mote out of thy brother's eye. Because I'm sitting here with this beam in my eye and I'm just going to try and correct my wife when she has this tiny little sliver. Like, that's not valid. That's not right. So, in all reality, one, we just have to take responsibility for who we are and what we are, and not take responsibility for the other people. And then second, recognize that you can't change somebody else, you can only change yourself. And then there's 3 key questions to ask. What do I really want for me? What do I really want for the other person or the other people? And then what do I really want for the relationship? And I emphasize really want. You know, you have to have a goal in mind if you want to improve your marriage, if you want to improve your friendships, if you want to improve really any relationship in your life. Like, for example, if me and Meg were struggling and if we wanted to have a better relationship, it's like, what do I really want in our relationship? Well, I want that connection, I want that intimacy, I want that love, I want that friendship. And then it's like, how am I going to get there? What are the steps that I'm going to take in order to make our relationship long lasting? So that was another aspect. And then the last one I actually wanted to mention was one way to approach conflict with any person you're in a relationship with. And it's this understanding that you approach it with this love, with this understanding that you truly care about the other person and you care about your relationship. And honestly, it's so easy. Like, it's super simple. You legit just walk in and say, look, I really care about you. And I really care about our relationship. And because of that, I want to talk about this topic because I think this topic is important enough in our relationship that it's really going to benefit us in the long run. And when you do that, we actually have. And so this approach, honestly, immediately diffuses any type of barriers, because they're like, oh my gosh,
You care about me?
you care about me, dog? Oh my gosh,
I care about you.
Oh my gosh. Like, that's how it goes. Not exactly with a high-pitched voice, but everything else is pretty accurate. So honestly, that's kind of what we wanted to talk about in this podcast, and to emphasize this understanding that within all of your relationships, like, nothing is unsalvageable. Like, whether it's a friend, a sibling, a brother, a sister, a parent, a grandparent, or your own spouse, like, you can always put in the work now and to make that relationship long lasting and something beautiful, even if it's been neglected for years and years and years.
Yeah. I think, too, something that Elijah and I also, one of, like, the ground rules for our relationship, and I think it should go for every relationship, is that you never speak ill of the other person. So I think, too, if you want to have a beautiful relationship with someone, I think the first thing is to make sure you never say anything bad about the person in the first place. And that's been a huge, there's just such a sense of trust between Elijah and I, because that's been that's been our ground rules since day one.
Day one, yeah.
And so there's just such a trust that, like, I know he's not talking about me
So
behind
if
my
I
back.
go to do something without Meg, which is like very, very rarely,
When
like
he does.
she knows that I always have her back first and foremost. Like I'm her biggest fan, and I'm always in her corner, and vice versa. And it's actually
even when we have like conflict going on, you know,
Yeah.
we never take it outside
yeah,
of our
that's what's actually
relationship.
really cool too. So like even if we're like hashing something out, and all of a sudden somebody comes over like, "Hey, how's Meg?" I'm like, "She's great. I love her
she's
so
awesome."
much. She's the best person in the world." Even though in my own mind I'm like, "Man, right now I'm so mad at her." You know, and so it's I mean, to put this on a spiritual aspect, our marriage to us is eternal, and it's very, very sacred. And because of that, we treat each other and our relationship as something that is sacred, and something that should, there's things within our relationship that should stay only between us because it's our relationship. It's not somebody else. The only person that should ever be involved in your relationship other than your spouse is
God.
God.
Yeah, and I think that's something special too, is that like there's certain things that I know we're only going to keep between us,
Mhm.
and I think that's really special too.
Absolutely.
You know, the most like the
The
most
intimate-
beautiful,
yeah.
intimate, and tender moments we have with each other
They're
of like
just
of
ours.
growth and of like forgiveness and of all of those things too. They stay between us, and I think that just makes
Even this little yahoo right here doesn't even know about him.
Nope.
She never will.
no, she won't.
Especially now. She doesn't even know what's going on.
Say hello. Anyways,
And what's kind of cool about this too, I was actually mentioning this to Meg. This is kind of a side note, but it makes sense. All you really need to do is find one person to be your best friend, and then you can make other best friends with that person.
she's my best friend
Like,
too.
can you imagine that? Like, think about that for a second. I made one best friend, and now I have 3 best friends. That's amazing. And I named 2 of them.
And they're great best friends to have. Look at her.
So,
Bing, 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 bing. Okay,
anyways,
thank you guys for
that
tuning
was
in
the
today.
podcast today. Thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe.
And
do all
thank
the
you to
things.
all the people who contributed.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate it.
appreciate that.
We're actually going to try to implement a lot of your advice. So thank you. And if you haven't, share this with somebody that you would like to improve your relationship with.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! All right, thanks, guys.
Peace!
Bye.